Hello everyone, and welcome to the Funny Documentary Channel. Tonight's story is a slow one, an unhurried exploration of a question that has fascinated dreamers, astronomers, and quiet thinkers for generations. How far can the James Webb Space Telescope actually see into the universe? Before we drift into tonight's quiet journey, I want to offer a small, peaceful invitation. If you enjoy these calming explorations into science and the soft corners of the universe, feel free to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment sharing when and where you're listening from. Some people join these episodes at bedtime, others while traveling, and some simply when the world feels a little too bright. Wherever you happen to be, your presence adds a small, warm light to this community. So settle in, find a comfortable position, and allow your breath to lengthen. We'll begin our slow descent into the cosmos, a quiet journey carried by ancient light, patient distances, and the soft hum of curiosity guiding us toward sleep. Chapter 1. The Question, Hiding in the Dark. There is a certain softness to the darkness above us, a quietness that seems to thicken after sunset, as if the sky has gently exhaled and settled into its own stillness. In that calm, the first stars appear, small ones at first, modest and polite, followed by brighter ones that carry themselves with a little more confidence. And for as long as humans have existed beneath this nightly performance, we have looked upward and wondered just how deep that darkness goes. The question slips into the mind almost without being invited. How far can we see? Not as a scientific puzzle, but as something that tugs gently at the imagination. It's a question that has lived beside campfires, temple courtyards, drifting boats, quiet rooftops, and bedroom windows. Long before anyone wrote equations about light or built machines to chase ancient photons, someone, perhaps many someones, tilted their head back and felt the soft weight of distance above them. What's remarkable is how natural that instinct is. We don't stare at the horizon of the ocean and assume it ends there. We know there's more beyond the line where water meets sky, even if we can't see it. But something about the night makes the question feel grander. The ocean hides ships, the sky hides time itself. And yet we look anyway, as if our eyes might stretch a little farther if we simply ask them to. When people thousands of years ago looked upward, they didn't talk about light years. They had no way to measure the speed of light or the age of distant stars. They didn't need to. They sensed intuitively that the sky was enormous, too enormous to grasp fully, and that staring into it was a quiet act of humility. Some imagined celestial spheres. Others imagined lanterns hung by invisible hands. Many simply imagined mysteries they would never solve and found an odd comfort in that. If you listen closely to the silence of the night, you can almost feel that same comfort today. The modern world may have become louder, brighter, and far more crowded with information, but the sky has not hurried itself on our behalf. It remains patient, distant, and almost amused by our attempts to understand it. The universe has never rushed to reveal its secrets. It seems perfectly content to let us try at our own pace. There is something endearing about humanity's relationship with distance. We're not especially good at imagining large scales. We tend to picture vastness the same way we picture long road trips, as something we might survive with enough snacks. Yet, when we stare upward, we sense a distance so great that even metaphors grow a little shy. The mind stretches toward it, like a hand reaching toward a lantern that keeps drifting farther away, always glowing, always out of reach. And still, we look. Not because we expect to see the edge of the universe. Nobody has ever spotted a cosmic no further sign. But because the act of looking feels like an invitation. The sky holds its darkness in an almost welcoming way. It is vast, but not hostile. Deep, but not cold to the imagination. Even a single star can make the night feel inhabited, as if something far away has chosen to send us a small reminder that we share the same cosmic backdrop. Distance becomes more than a measurement in moments like this. It becomes a feeling. The space between one star and another becomes a landscape of possibility. The stretch between us and the farthest thing we can see becomes a quiet thread connecting our brief lives to something older than memory. When you look long enough, even the darkness begins to look like a gentle ocean, broad, slow, and faintly shimmering. People sometimes describe the universe as empty, but that word never quite fits. Emptiness feels like the absence of something. The universe feels more like the presence of something we haven't finished learning the language for. We sense its depth the way we sense a large forest at night, not by what we see, but by what we feel brushing against the edges of imagination. And in that awareness, a small, subtle humor emerges. Humans who once struggled to find their way to the next village after sunset now routinely ask how far they can see into the cosmos. It is wonderfully optimistic of us. The universe is unimaginably vast, and yet here we are, squinting upward like someone peering into an attic, hoping to spot something interesting near the back wall. But the universe does not seem offended by our boldness. If anything, it appears to enjoy the attention. Stars continue shining even when we're not looking. Galaxies rotate with a quiet dignity. Light travels for billions of years, arriving at Earth with the patience of someone willing to knock gently on our door to deliver a message we never expected. The question, how far can we see, has no sharp edges, no urgency. It hums softly in the mind, inviting contemplation rather than answers. It is the kind of question the night sky was made for, a question that stretches outward as gently as the stars themselves. And somewhere, deep in that darkness, the universe waits, calm, ancient, and entirely unhurried, knowing that we will keep looking as long as the night continues to fall. Chapter 2. Light that refuses to hurry. Light has always behaved as though time is optional for it. It moves quickly, yes, astonishingly so, but never with the attitude of something in a rush. Instead, it carries itself like a wanderer who simply happens to have very long strides. If light could speak, it might insist that it isn't speeding. It's just strolling at 8 million times the pace we prefer. And in that gentle mismatch between its nature and ours, an entire universe of delayed stories is born. When we say that light travels, it may conjure images of particles zipping purposefully across space, but the truth feels far more tranquil. Light doesn't choose a destination. It doesn't push through the cosmos with determination or concern. It simply moves in straight lines unless persuaded otherwise by something massive or dense. In its own way, light is one of the calmest participants in the universe. It is always arriving, but never arriving late, because it has no appointment to keep. What we call seeing is just our eyes catching light that has wandered into them, telling us a story that might be seconds, years, or eons old. The distances involved stretch the idea of immediacy until it becomes something softer. Even the nearest star beyond the sun sends us light more than 4 years old. The image of that star is the star's past, delivered to us with impeccable politeness, as though wrapped carefully and hand-delivered across interstellar space. This quiet delay is not a flaw. It is the nature of cosmic communication. Every night, the sky presents us with a mosaic of memories. Some memories are recent, some are older than the continents beneath us, and some are so ancient that the galaxies producing them have changed shape many times since releasing them. But the light travels on, seemingly unconcerned that the universe itself has rearranged behind it. How about you might imagine light as a kind of cosmic archivist, gathering impressions of everything it touches, stars, dust, distant storms, and carrying them to any place curious enough to notice. It does not judge its cargo. It doesn't ask whether a star is elegant or disheveled, whether a galaxy is spiraling gracefully or tumbling through a gravitational mishap. Light simply records and continues on, like a traveler jotting down quiet notes in a journal filled with millions of blank pages. Despite its speed, light feels strangely gentle. It doesn't disturb what it passes through unless the object is particularly delicate. It slips between atoms in Earth's atmosphere, glides across oceans, brushes reflections from building windows, and somehow finds its way to our eyes with barely a whisper of its long journey. If light wore shoes, it would never leave footprints, and yet this traveler that seems so effortless knows distances that boggle imagination. A photon that left a distant galaxy billions of years ago might have drifted through empty voids for most of its journey, passing nothing but the faint breath of intergalactic dust. In all that time, it never hurried. It simply continued, as if following an unbroken path laid out before the universe even had time to cool. When that photon eventually lands in one of our telescopes, or occasionally on the retina of a curious stargazer, it completes a story older than humanity itself. The image it delivers is not a snapshot of what exists now, but of what existed in a moment so far removed from our present that even the term ancient seems too young for it. This notion that seeing far means seeing late can feel disorienting at first, but it carries its own quiet beauty. It suggests that the universe is not merely something we observe. It is something we listen to. We tune in to frequencies arriving from times long faded, and the cosmos responds by offering us patient echoes of everything it has allowed to shine. Even familiar things nearby carry a touch of this delay. The moon's light, whether bouncing from its surface or spilling from an eclipse, takes a little over a second to reach us. In everyday life, a second is hardly worth noting, unless one is waiting for toast to pop from a stubborn toaster. But cosmic time is wonderfully flexible. A second to the moon, years to nearby stars, and billions of years to distant galaxies all fold into one concept. The universe shows itself in past tense. Earth, meanwhile, behaves as if this arrangement is entirely normal. Trees grow, oceans shift, cities light up, and still the night sky remains a quiet gallery displaying memories from every era of cosmic history. We walk beneath these memories without noticing their antiquity, much like someone strolling through an art museum unaware that the paintings around them took centuries to reach their final forms. Light itself does not appear proud of its longevity. It does not boast about being older than planets or having witnessed the early universe. If anything, it seems content to drift anonymously. A single photon that lands on the surface of Earth may have traveled across the cosmos without ever once encountering anything that would suggest its journey mattered. And yet the moment it strikes a detector or telescope mirror, it becomes a messenger, one that has been carrying its story for longer than life has existed here. In the end, the nature of light is not defined by speed, but by patience. It never rushes to arrive because every moment of its travel is simply part of what it is. Through its unhurried movement, it teaches us that the universe does not reveal itself all at once. It reveals itself in layers of time, drifting steadily toward us, one gentle memory at a time. And as we continue to watch those memories arrive, we come to understand that the cosmos has always been speaking, softly, steadily, and without haste, waiting for the moments when we choose to listen. Chapter 3. When Distance Becomes Time. There is a stillness to distance, a kind of gentleness that settles over the mind when we contemplate something far away. Yet, in the universe, distance behaves with a subtle imagination of its own. It doesn't simply stretch outward like a road or coastline. Instead, it folds itself into time, blending the two so thoroughly that the farther we look, the older everything becomes. Out there, space behaves like a museum where the exhibits are arranged not by theme, but by age. Older displays resting behind newer ones, each preserved by the simple fact that their light is still traveling. When you gaze upward on a clear night, the stars appear scattered across a vast, dark canvas. Some dazzle, some twinkle faintly, and others sit with a kind of quiet confidence. Yet what you are seeing is not a present moment at all. It is a layered portrait of the universe's past, painted stroke by the slow arrival of ancient light. Even the closest stars shine with the echo of earlier moments. The farther a star lies, the deeper into time your eyes drift. This is one of the universe's most graceful quirks. It does not allow you to look outward without also looking backward. You may intend to explore distance, but time gently follows. The cosmos seems to enjoy this pairing as though it prefers to reveal its history gradually, offering glimpses of earlier eras with the patience of an elder, telling stories by lamplight. The layering is delicate. Objects nearby belong to the universe's more recent chapters, the cosmic equivalent of fresh ink. Beyond them float regions from slightly older epochs, where stars formed in clusters and galaxies drifted into their characteristic shapes. And farther still lie realms where the universe was younger, simpler, and slightly more chaotic, as though still deciding what sort of structures it intended to build. This arrangement turns every observation into an act of quiet archaeology. Unlike excavating ancient ruins, however, there is no brushing away dust or deciphering inscriptions. The artifacts arrive willingly, carried to us on threads of light. The universe performs its own preservation, allowing ancient moments to traverse unimaginable distances until they intersect with our curiosity. When astronomers examine distant galaxies through powerful telescopes, they are not seeing those galaxies as they are today. They are observing scenes from a cosmic childhood, preserved in the faint glow that left long before our world formed. These galaxies might have changed dramatically since then, grown, merged, or faded, But the images we receive are untouched by all of that. They are faithful representations of moments that no longer exist anywhere except in these lingering beams of light. This idea gives distance a softness rather than a harsh edge. Nothing far away appears frozen or unreachable. Instead, it glows with the warmth of memory. In a sense, the night sky is less a map and more a diary, one written over billions of years, one in which the author never erased a single entry. And because the universe writes slowly, each page remains suspended in space, waiting patiently for someone, anyone, to read it. Imagine drifting through these cosmic layers as though floating through water of gradually increasing depth. Near the surface, everything feels familiar: bright stars, smooth patterns, gentle starlight. As you descend, that familiarity gives way to murkier, older regions where clusters were forming in earnest and galaxies were shaped by the gravitational tug of their neighbors. Descend further still, and the universe reveals its earliest strokes, primordial structures shimmering like half-formed ideas. In this calm descent, time stretches effortlessly. There is no rush to reach the earliest layers, nor any pressure to analyze them. The universe is not demanding comprehension. It merely offers a chance to witness the long trail of events that led from simplicity to complexity. It is a slow and generous invitation, the sort that can be accepted quietly, perhaps with the same feeling one has when turning the brittle pages of an old book. Distance turning into time creates an unusual harmony, one that blurs the boundaries between past and present. When we observe faraway galaxies, we are not looking at ancient scenes replayed for us. We are catching them in the act of being ancient, because the light that left them has been traveling uninterrupted ever since. Their past is still on the road, still on its way, still carrying the imprint of moments that vanished from their own skies billions of years ago. In this sense, space does not erode its history the way Earth does. Here on the ground, wind, water, and life reshape landscapes with tireless enthusiasm. The past becomes buried or worn away, but space preserves its memories through distance. The universe may be vast, but it is also strangely sentimental. It keeps old scenes tucked into its farthest corners, sending them forward like postcards addressed to whoever might one day be waiting. And so, when you look deeper into the night, you are not stretching your vision across a void. You are leafing through the universe's timeline, each star and galaxy a chapter from a different era. You are witnessing a cosmos that does not rush to conceal its age, but instead allows its ancient light to drift unhurried into our waiting eyes. In that realization that far away quietly becomes long ago, distance softens even further. It transforms from a cold measurement into something warm and almost tender, offering us the chance to glimpse moments the universe has carried for us, patiently, across the great and silent dark. Chapter 4. Why the Universe Glows in Invisible Colors. There is a gentleness to warmth, the kind that lingers after a fire has dimmed or after a hand has lifted from a surface. Even without seeing it, you can feel the faint residue of energy that has not yet decided to leave. In the universe, this lingering warmth is everywhere. It settles into clouds of dust, drifts between stars, and clings to objects that have long since slipped into quiet states of existence. Most of this warmth takes the form of infrared light, an invisible glow that suffuses the cosmos like breath on a cold window. Infrared light is not a dramatic kind of light. It doesn't sparkle the way starlight does. It doesn't blaze across the sky or streak dramatically like meteors enjoying their brief moment of importance. Infrared is far subtler, though it moves through space with a softness that rarely demands attention, like a whisper meant only for those willing to lean a little closer. In many ways, infrared feels like the universe's private language, the one it uses when speaking quietly about things not meant for ordinary eyes. If visible light is the universe's daylight conversation, infrared is its after-hours reflection. The moment something cools, slows, or rests, the invisible glow begins. Stars enveloped in dust release it. Young planets under construction radiate it. Clouds on the brink of collapse, shaping themselves into future suns, warm gently from within and send out subtle waves of infrared that drift like soft hums through the cosmic dark. The remarkable thing about this glow is that it continues even when visible light cannot pass. Dust, so common in the universe that it might as well be cosmic confetti, tends to block or scatter normal starlight, but infrared slips through with quiet confidence, unaffected by the clutter. It doesn't mind obstacles that trouble other wavelengths. It moves slowly and steadily, as if saying, "I'll take the back route, I don't mind." This gives the infrared universe an almost intimate quality. It reveals what is tucked away, wrapped, shielded, or swaddled in cosmic dust. It shows the glow behind the curtain rather than the spotlight out front. If visible light gives us the public face of the cosmos, infrared shows us everything backstage, the warm machinery of creation, transformation, and dissolution. There is also a tenderness in how infrared carries heat. Heat is, after all, a form of memory. A warm stone remembers the afternoon sun. A cooling cup of tea remembers the kettle. A star forming deep inside a dusty nursery remembers the collapse of gas that gave it shape. And all these memories drift outward as infrared light, carrying impressions of moments that have already unfolded. Not grand events, but gentle ones, slow, continuous, rhythmic, like the quiet rise and fall of breathing. Even the universe as a whole carries this warmth. Space may appear cold and indifferent, but much of it glows faintly with infrared signatures left over from countless interactions. Starlight absorbed and re-emitted, particles colliding in delicate embraces, clouds stirred by gravitational currents. It is a reminder that emptiness is rarely truly empty. It holds the afterglow of events both recent and ancient. Infrared light also stretches more easily than shorter wavelengths. As the universe expands, it pulls at all the light traveling through it, elongating the waves like someone gently tugging on a ribbon. Visible light from extremely distant galaxies often becomes stretched so far that it slips into the infrared range. These galaxies were not born red. The universe simply lengthened their stories, turning their light into something we cannot see without special help. In this way, infrared becomes a vessel carrying the signatures of the earliest structures ever formed. The effect is almost poetic. The oldest light becomes the softest light. The most ancient memories arrive in the gentlest colors. It is as though the universe, having sent these messages across billions of years, delivers them in a softened voice, aware that the passage of time has already made them fragile. In daily life, we rarely think about infrared. We associate it with warmth from a heater or the faint reddish glow of something recently touched by heat. Yet the universe is woven with it. If our eyes could see these wavelengths naturally, the night sky would appear transformed. Every region would shimmer with hidden textures. Newborn stars wrapped in dusty cocoons, swirling clouds heated from within, long dead suns radiating their final warmth like embers drifting in the wind. The darkness would feel less empty, more alive, full of soft signatures from objects in every stage of existence. This invisible glow changes how we understand the cosmos. It reminds us that what we see is not the full story. Most of the universe's warmth resides beyond the reach of human vision, hidden in ranges our eyes were never designed to perceive. But invisible does not mean absent. It simply means the universe has layers we have only begun to uncover. Infrared light is the universe's quiet confession, a murmured admission that beneath its darkness lies a tapestry of heat and history. The glow is never loud, never urgent. It persists, even when unobserved, as if confident in its place. In this soft spectrum, the cosmos reveals not the spectacle of its brightest stars, but the subtler rhythms that guide its evolution. Infrared light is the warmth left behind, the afterglow of motions, collisions, births, and endings. It is the universe telling its story not in brilliance, but in whispers. And as those whispers drift through the cold expanses of space, they carry with them the secrets only silence can keep, waiting for the moment when someone, somewhere, chooses to listen. Chapter 5. A telescope that learned to listen for heat. In the quiet reaches beyond Earth's atmosphere, there floats a telescope that seems less like an observatory and more like a contemplative listener. It does not blink or squint or strain its eyes because it has none. What it does have is a remarkable ability to detect warmth, warmth so faint that most of the universe has forgotten it's still there. The James Webb Space Telescope was built for this peculiar purpose, to listen for heat, the way one might listen for footsteps in freshly fallen snow. What makes Webb unusual is that it treats the universe not as a collection of bright points, but as a landscape of gentle temperatures. Even the smallest warmth stands out to it, like a whisper carried across a still lake. A galaxy shrouded in dust, invisible to the human eye, all releases just enough heat for Webb to notice. A newborn star, still wrapped in clouds, glows quietly beneath its cocoon. Webb seems to lean in, attentive, as though saying, "Go on, I'm listening." This attention is not passive. It requires a telescope that is both immensely sensitive and almost comically chilly. Webb was designed to become colder than anything naturally found in our solar system, except for the deep shadows of distant moons. This level of cold is not a preference. It is a necessity. To detect warmth from distant galaxies, Webb must not contribute any warmth of its own. Otherwise, its own glow would drown out the faint heat drifting toward it from across the universe. Imagine trying to hear a whisper from another room while standing next to a roaring fireplace. The crackle and hiss of your own surroundings would overwhelm everything else. Webb avoids this problem by extinguishing its own cosmic fireplace, chilling itself until its warmth is almost non-existent. Only then can it hear what the universe has been saying in soft infrared tones for billions of years. This sensitivity gives Webb a kind of personality, not in the literal sense, but in the way it behaves. When it observes a star-forming cloud, it doesn't look for the obvious, dazzling glow. It searches for the faint warmth trapped within the dust. When it studies a distant galaxy, it pays attention to the elongated glow of its stretched light, a warmth that left the galaxy when the universe itself was much younger. Webb listens for these signals with the patience of someone who knows that important stories are often told quietly. The design that allows this listening is elegant without being intimidating. Webb's large gold-coated mirror gathers faint warmth the way a hand might gather the last bit of heat from a cooling teacup. The mirror doesn't reflect visible light for our benefit. It collects ancient warmth for its own. Its instruments, sheltered behind a sun shield that resembles a stack of silk sails, analyze these tiny signals with the care of someone handling fragile letters from a distant past. The sun shield deserves its own moment of quiet admiration. It's an enormous, glimmering structure that always faces the sun, earth, and moon, not to admire them, but to avoid their warmth at all costs. If Webb could speak, it might apologize for turning its back on us, explaining gently that it is not ignoring Earth, it simply cannot afford the distraction. The telescope keeps its attention fixed on the cold, dark reaches of space where the faintest heat hides. There is a subtle humor in how seriously Webb takes this task. The universe whispers, and Webb behaves like a courteous guest at a very important, very quiet gathering. It holds its breath, lowers its temperature, and leans closer, determined not to miss a single murmur. If another telescope were to ask why Webb takes such careful measures, Webb might reply, ever politely, because someone has to hear the shy galaxies. But its sensitivity serves a greater purpose. By listening for heat rather than looking for brightness, Webb reveals parts of the cosmos that have remained hidden behind curtains of dust and distance. This is not the harsh, exposed beauty of a spotlight, but the soft reveal of a lantern glowing through layers of fabric. Structures take shape not through their brilliance, but through their warmth. Warmth that has traveled across unimaginable expanses to arrive at Webb's waiting sensors. What makes this especially moving is the idea that none of this warmth expected to be found. It was released long before Webb existed, long before humanity existed, long before Earth took its current shape. And yet, by some quiet alignment of circumstances, that ancient heat now drifts into the open palms of a telescope designed specifically to notice it. As Webb listens, the universe continues sending its soft echoes. Star nurseries glow gently from within. Dust clouds radiate their lingering heat. Galaxies whisper across vast distances, their faint warmth stretched thin by the expansion of space. Now Webb catches these signals with the calm concentration of someone studying a fragile artifact under soft candlelight. This chapter in the story of cosmic observation is less about seeing and more about sensing. Feeling the quiet warmth of distant events, interpreting their echoes, and acknowledging that even the faintest glow has something to say. Webb does not force the universe to speak louder. It simply listens better. And in that listening, the cosmos reveals a richness that was always present, waiting for the moment when someone or something would finally lean close enough to hear. Chapter 6. How cold helps you see further. Cold on Earth is usually something we try to escape. We wrap ourselves in blankets, bury our hands in our pockets, and negotiate with thermostats as if they were temperamental house spirits. Cold is what nips at our fingers on winter mornings and convinces us to stay indoors just a little longer. It is a sensation with personality, insistent, uninvited, and occasionally melodramatic. But in space, cold behaves differently. It doesn't sting or bite. It simply exists quietly and reliably, like a background presence that has no interest in our comfort or our complaints. There, cold becomes a condition rather than an inconvenience, a sprawling, stable emptiness that settles over everything not warmed by a nearby star. And the James Webb Space Telescope, unlike the humans who built it, seeks out that cold with wholehearted enthusiasm. For Webb, cold is not a challenge. It is a requirement. It must be cold. Colder than ice. Colder than the frozen surfaces of distant moons. Colder even than the ambient chill of open space. Its instruments need temperatures so low that the telescope itself forgets it once belonged to a warm and bustling world. Only then can it observe the faint warmth drifting from the farthest corners of the cosmos. Temperature in this story becomes a character with motives of its own. Warmth is friendly, familiar, and eager to make itself known. It radiates, spreads, and refuses to stay still. Cold, on the other hand, is discreet. Cold withdraws, cold hides. Cold creates the stillness Webb relies on, a calm so deep that even the tiniest trace of distant heat becomes noticeable. Imagine a quiet room where one person whispers. In a crowd, the whisper is lost. In a silent library, it becomes clear. Webb is attempting something similar, except the whisper it seeks is a faint glow from objects billions of years old, and the library must be colder than anything naturally available in the solar system. If Webb carried its own warmth into space without protection, it would glow brightly in infrared, blinding itself with its own heat, the way someone trying to stargaze might ruin their night vision by glancing at a flashlight. Webb would become a telescope staring at its own radiance, which is not particularly useful unless one's goal is to admire the engineering rather than the universe. To prevent this, Webb cools itself with a kind of cosmic discipline. Its sunshield, a stack of 5 shimmering layers, blocks heat from the sun, earth, and moon all at once. The shield behaves like a parasol designed for a star that refuses to set. On the warm side of the shield, temperatures rise to desert levels. On the cold side, where Webb's instruments rest, so the temperature plummets to conditions so frigid they are difficult to describe without checking whether your breath has suddenly turned into frost. This enormous temperature difference gives Webb a slightly dramatic flair. One side basking in perpetual sunlight, the other side practicing a level of chill that would make even the most determined winter enthusiast reconsider their choices. If warmth is the extroverted guest at a party, laughing loudly, greeting everyone, cold is the reserved individual standing quietly by the window, observing everything with serene detachment. Webb simply chooses the company of cold. Over time, the telescope settles into a deep, unwavering coolness. Its mirrors contract slightly, becoming more precise. Its sensors grow more attentive. In this state, Webb resembles someone who has found the perfect conditions to concentrate, surrounded by silence, free from distraction. The cold doesn't hinder it. It clears its mind, or at least its instruments, allowing the faintest cosmic heat to stand out like a candle in a dark hall. There is a subtle humor in this necessity. Humans, who struggle to keep their coffee warm for more than a few minutes, created a telescope that thrives in temperatures colder than anything they would willingly endure. If Webb had a personality, it might offer a polite apology for its preferences. I mean no offense, but I simply see better when I feel nothing at all. We would nod, shivering slightly, and agree that extraordinary circumstances require extraordinary chill. But the cold serves more than sensitivity. It represents a transition into a realm where ordinary rules soften. As the telescope cools, the familiar world fades. Warm breezes, summer sunlight, and steaming cups of tea become irrelevant. Webb exists in a domain where heat is not shared but hunted, where warmth is precious precisely because it is so scarce. In this environment, ancient signals that have traveled for billions of years emerge gently from the background. These signals are not loud or insistent. They would be lost completely in the warmth of Earth, or even in the more temperate regions of space. Only in deep cold do they reveal themselves, like faint footprints on untouched snow. This cold also grants Webb the clarity to observe regions that would otherwise remain impenetrable. Dusty stellar nurseries, glowing faintly beneath their protective blankets, become visible. The stretched warmth of faraway galaxies, softened by cosmic expansion, reaches Webb's sensors without being drowned out. In a universe dominated by vast distances and subtle signals, cold is the quiet stage on which ancient heat performs. And so, the telescope keeps its vigil, shrouded in a chill that would freeze any human breath. It watches the universe from a place of deep stillness, allowing warmth older than our planet to arrive unchallenged. Temperature becomes not an obstacle, but an ally, a partner in the delicate work of revealing what has been hidden. In its quiet cold, Webb extends our sight, letting us glimpse the soft glow of events long gone. It is a reminder that sometimes seeing further requires stepping away from comfort, embracing stillness, and listening for the faint warmth that lingers where no warmth should be. In that gentle contradiction, cold opening the door to ancient heat, the universe reveals yet another of its quiet and patient wonders. Chapter 7. The Long Journey of Ancient Photons. Somewhere in the earliest stretches of cosmic history, long before planets had formed or galaxies had settled into familiar shapes, a small packet of light began its journey. It emerged quietly. No trumpet of creation, no dramatic flash, just a soft release of energy from a young, restless star learning how to shine. The photon did not hurry. It simply stepped into the vastness around it, unaware that the path ahead would be longer than the entire lifetime of worlds yet to exist. In those early days, the universe was a busier place. Matter drifted in loose gatherings, not yet organized into spirals or clusters. Gas clouds flowed like slow rivers, stirred by gravity's gentle insistence. The photons slipped through these environments as effortlessly as dust floating through a sunbeam. It did not question where it was going. It simply moved forward because that is what light does. It travels, unbothered by the concept of destination. If the photon could think, perhaps it would have been surprised by how empty space eventually became. Over billions of years, the universe expanded, stretching the very fabric through which the photon moved. What once felt like a crowded hallway gradually transformed into an enormous, silent plain. The photon stretched with it, its wavelength growing longer, softer, more subdued, as though age had calmed it. Along its path, the photon passed by countless events it could not possibly understand. Stars ignited in distant corners. Galaxies collided in slow-motion choreography. Planets assembled grain by grain. Entire solar systems lived and died without ever glimpsing the light that drifted near them. Yet the photon kept traveling, steady and patient, like a messenger carrying a story through a world that no longer resembled the place it started. There is something almost tender about the way these ancient photons persist. They do not decay or tire. They do not fade simply because the journey has been long. Their endurance is quiet, unassuming. A photon released when the universe was young can still arrive today with its story intact, as though time had no desire to erase it. But the journey was not always smooth. Along the way, the photon encountered the curvature of space, bending gently when gravity nudged it. It skirted massive structures, dipping around galaxies as though politely stepping aside. It threaded through filaments of cosmic matter, weaving its way through the large-scale skeleton of the universe. Through all of this, it remained steady, never speeding up, never slowing down, always keeping pace with the unchanging rhythm of light. Occasionally, the photon might have brushed past dust grains or slipped through regions dense with gas. It avoided being absorbed by mere coincidence. Countless other photons were not so lucky. Some were swallowed by atoms eager to warm themselves. Some were scattered into new directions, their stories altered forever. But this photon, this particular traveler, carried on untouched, continuing its ancient voyage. As ages passed, the universe transformed around it. The structures of space became grander, more defined. Galaxies matured, stars settled into their long lives, and planets cooled to quiet dignity. Civilizations rose and fell on worlds drifting far from the photon's path, none aware that a tiny piece of light was gliding silently past, older than any memory they could imagine. And then, quite unexpectedly, the photon approached a small, unassuming corner of the cosmos, a place where one star orbited a pale blue planet, teeming with noise, weather, oceans, and questions. The photon did not know it was nearing a world where beings had begun to wonder how far light could travel, or how old the universe truly was. It simply continued, drifting toward a point in space where a curious object had been positioned just right to intercept its path. The object was elegant in its simplicity, a collection of gold-coated mirrors, arranged with the precision of a folded flower, waiting in the darkness with the quiet posture of deep concentration. The James Webb Space Telescope, though the photon had no concept of names, had been placed there with one purpose: to catch ancient light, like a gentle hand catching a falling leaf. When the photon finally reached it, billions of years after leaving its birthplace, it did not announce its arrival. It simply touched the mirror and surrendered its story. That story was faint, stretched by age, softened by cosmic expansion, but still whole, still recognizable, still carrying the imprint of the star it left behind, a star that no longer existed in the form it once did. In that moment, something extraordinary occurred. The photon, which had traveled across an ocean of time, found itself transformed into data, a whisper from the past translated into a form beings on a distant world could understand. The telescope listened, not with ears, but with instruments capable of hearing heat that had drifted through space longer than life had existed on Earth. The photon's journey ended not in brilliance, but in quiet recognition. After billions of years of wandering through emptiness, it had finally been noticed, and perhaps if photons could feel satisfaction, this one might have taken a small comfort in knowing that its impossibly long voyage had contributed to something far larger than itself, a deeper human understanding of the universe's earliest days. In the end, this ancient traveler found a home in the waiting mirror of a telescope designed to appreciate such endurance, and the universe, timeless and vast, continued sending countless more photons on journeys just as patient, just as improbable, and just as quietly beautiful. Chapter 8. Galaxies that barely exist anymore. When the James Webb Space Telescope turns its gaze toward the farthest reaches of the cosmos, it is not looking at galaxies as they are today. It is seeing galaxies as they once were, in eras so distant that the very concept of now becomes almost laughably small by comparison. These galaxies shine in Webb's images like delicate lanterns suspended in the dark, lanterns whose flames have long since flickered, transformed, or gone out entirely. What Webb captures is not their current state, but their oldest greetings, are still traveling across the universe with patient determination. There is something unexpectedly gentle about this. The galaxies Webb reveals are like echoes arriving long after the original sound has faded. They are relics of a time when the universe was young, when stars were assembling themselves with the hesitant enthusiasm of beginners, and matter was still learning how to arrange itself into something coherent. When we study them, we are doing something closer to reading a diary entry than observing a living structure. The voice we hear belongs to someone who has changed beyond recognition. Some of these distant galaxies appear small and irregular, almost shy compared to the grand spirals we see nearby. They glow with the rough warmth of early star formation. Oh, their shapes stretching and folding in ways that suggest they hadn't yet decided what kind of galaxies they wanted to become. Others shine intensely, like cosmic overachievers burning through their youthful energy faster than their neighbors. Today, those same galaxies might be vast, orderly structures, or they might have merged, disassembled, or faded into obscurity. And yet, their ancient light continues to travel toward us, delivering messages from versions of themselves that no longer exist. It is a quiet reminder that the universe does not preserve things as they are. It preserves the light they once released. In a way, Webb is not taking photographs at all. It is receiving introductions, formal, polite introductions, from galaxies that were speaking billions of years ago. These messages arrive long after the conversations within those galaxies have shifted, evolved, or concluded. Webb listens with impeccable courtesy, fully aware that the senders never anticipated an audience. The telescope's mirrors reflect not the present, but the remnants of a cosmic hello that has been wandering through the dark for eons. This notion carries a soft, bittersweet quality. To look at Webb's deepest images is to meet galaxies in their youth, knowing their futures are inaccessible to us. The light reaching Webb now left before Earth existed, before our sun gathered dust into its orbit, before our planet cooled enough to hold oceans. If those galaxies could see us in return, which they cannot, they would see nothing at all, or perhaps only a cloud of unshaped matter drifting through space, all unaware that it would one day host curious creatures capable of building telescopes. There is a tenderness in this asymmetry. We meet them as they were. They will never meet us as we are. Some galaxies in Webb's view may have merged with companions long ago, losing themselves in larger structures. Others may have developed into elegant spirals, or scattered into faint smudges, barely clinging to form. A few might have dimmed entirely, their stars cooled and dispersed, leaving behind only ghostly remnants. But their ancient light continues its journey regardless, slipping through space with the determination of a letter that refuses to be lost in the mail. As we observe these fragile glimmers, impermanence becomes a gentle companion to the narrative. Galaxies live on time scales that dwarf our own, yet even they evolve, transform, and eventually fade. Webb's images capture them at moments they can never reclaim, moments frozen not by choice, but by the slow, inevitable spacing of time and distance. It is as though the universe preserved these scenes without meaning to, simply because its own vastness allowed the light to keep traveling. And so, when we look at a galaxy that barely exists anymore, we are witnessing a cosmic memory. We are peering into a chapter of the universe's story that has already concluded, or at least moved far beyond what we can know. The galaxy itself is no more obligated to stay the same than a river is obligated to hold its shape, yet the light from its earlier phase remains, carrying the imprint of its youthful disorder. There is a gentle irony here. Humans often cling to photographs as records of moments they fear will fade. Meanwhile, the universe produces its own vast album of ancient snapshots, sending them across unimaginable distances where they drift until someone or something happens to be looking in just the right direction. Webb is one of the few tools that can recognize these cosmic keepsakes, appreciating them for what they are, fragments of a time long gone. In this understanding, a certain calm settles over the idea of cosmic impermanence. Nothing in the universe remains as it was, not stars, not galaxies, not even the space between them. And yet, through the gentle persistence of light, earlier versions of these things continue to reach us, offering glimpses into stages we were never meant to witness. Webb meets these galaxies not as a documentarian of the present, but as a quiet historian who pieces together stories from the oldest surviving letters. It doesn't judge their shapes or their awkward youth. It simply receives their introductions with the patience of a listener who knows that every voice, no matter how faint or outdated, carries something worth hearing. And as each ancient glimmer fades into Webb's detectors, the universe continues telling its story, not as it is, but as it was in all its fleeting, unfinished beauty. Chapter 9. The Edge That Isn't Really an Edge. When people first hear that a telescope can look across billions of years, they sometimes imagine a final frontier, a hard, gleaming line at the very edge of existence, like the boundary of a map where the parchment simply stops. It is tempting to picture the universe that way, a grand expanse with a neat outer border, as though someone had carefully trimmed it with cosmic scissors. But the universe is not built on straight lines or sharp endings. It has no fondness for abruptness. Instead, it prefers transitions, gentle slopes, and the kind of quiet ambiguity that encourages contemplation rather than certainty. So when we speak of how far Webb can see, we are not pointing toward a cliff. We are describing a gradient, a steady thinning of visibility, a soft dimming where the cosmos becomes more delicate, more stretched, more elusive. The farthest regions of space-time are not abrupt curtains, but slow fades, where light grows increasingly fragile until it becomes difficult for any instrument, no matter how sensitive, to coax meaning from it? In truth, there is something comforting in this lack of finality. A sharp edge might feel dramatic, but it would also feel strangely uncharacteristic of a universe that has always preferred to whisper rather than declare. The cosmos behaves like a storyteller who trails off gently at the end of a tale, leaving room for imagination to drift into the spaces between words. If the universe did have an edge, one suspects it would feel obligated to put up a polite sign announcing it, but instead it gives us nothing so rigid. The limits of vision blur into a mist of faint, stretched light that has traveled so far and so long that it arrives more as suggestion than statement. The boundary is not a barrier, but a delicately fading horizon. In the deepest observations, Webb encounters regions where galaxies appear small, dim, and strangely elongated. Their light has been softened by the expansion of space, be stretched into long wavelengths that carry the marks of great age. These galaxies are not difficult to see because they are hiding. They are difficult to see because the universe has stretched them gently, the way a distant note becomes thin and faint as it drifts across a valley. What Webb detects is not an abrupt cutoff, but the gradual thinning of a cosmic melody. The effect is almost atmospheric, even though there is no atmosphere out there. It resembles the way a mountain range fades into pale blue at great distance, not because the mountains have vanished, but because the intervening air scatters their details. In space, the thinning is not caused by air, but by time itself, stretching light until it grows too long and too subtle for our technology to interpret with confidence. This is why asking, how far can Webb see, is a bit like asking, how far does twilight extend? There is no single answer, only a slow shift from clarity into suggestion. Webb's vision does not end. It dissolves. And in that dissolution lies a quiet beauty. The universe gives us as much as it can, and then, when its oldest light becomes too faint, it simply recedes into a gentle uncertainty. Even the concept of an edge of the observable universe is more of a soft guideline than a hard line. It marks not a physical barrier, but a moment beyond which light has not had time to reach us. The limitation is not imposed by walls, but by time itself, by the simple fact that messages from those regions have not yet arrived at our doorstep. It is less a fence and more a polite delay. One could argue that the universe is still in the process of sending its oldest stories. They are on their way, drifting through the expanding fabric of space, taking their time. Light from certain epochs has been traveling toward us for billions of years and may require billions more before it reaches any instrument we build. The cosmos is under no obligation to rush. This gradual nature also means that seeing farther is not an act of breaking through barriers, but of extending sensitivity, of learning to hear whispers that were once too soft, of illuminating regions that once seemed empty. Webb doesn't push against the universe. It leans gently into its faintest offerings. What lies just beyond Webb's reach is not hidden maliciously. It is simply too young in its journey toward us. The absence of a hard edge has a calming effect on the imagination. Instead of confronting a sudden nothingness, we meet a subtle layering of diminished signals, like the fading ripples of a stone dropped into water long ago. Beyond those regions, the universe continues, vast, unhurried, indifferent to whether we witness it or not. And yet, in its own quiet way, It keeps sending us light, as if to say, here's what I once was, if you care to look. This perspective softens our relationship with cosmic distance. We no longer seek a single number, a definite limit, a point of finality. Instead, we accept a spectrum, a slow easing from visible to invisible, from clear to almost imagined. The universe does not withhold its secrets behind closed doors. It simply fades them into horizons that grow more delicate with age. In the end, Webb's farthest glimpses do not mark the end of the universe. They mark the beginning of its most elusive regions, where the light is so ancient and stretched that it arrives at the threshold of perception. The cosmos does not end at this threshold. It simply continues in ways we cannot yet see. And in that gentle, unhurried continuation lies one of the universe's most soothing truths. Even where our vision dims, existence goes on quietly, patiently, and without the need for sharp boundaries. Chapter 10. When the universe was young and untidy. In the unimaginably early chapters of cosmic history, long before the universe had settled into its sweeping spirals and stately clusters, everything was a bit disheveled. Not chaotic in a dramatic, cinematic sense, more like a room hastily cleaned by someone expecting guests any minute. But not quite having the time to finish the job. The universe was young, enthusiastic, and undeniably messy. Galaxies were among the first structures attempting to form, though at that stage, galaxy was a generous term. They were more like clusters of stars that happened to be hanging out in roughly the same vicinity, held together by gravity that was still trying out its leadership role. These early galaxies didn't yet have the elegant shapes that adorn astronomy textbooks today. Instead, they looked as though the cosmos was experimenting, trying circles, blobs, elongated smudges, and hopeful little lumps. If the universe back then had been a teenager learning to draw, these proto-galaxies would have been the doodles in the margins, energetic, promising, but not quite ready for framing. Their sizes reflected this awkward youth. Compared to the sprawling star cities that exist now, early galaxies were small, almost timid. They gathered stars in compact, irregular patches, like handfuls of glitter tossed onto black fabric without a ruler or a plan. Some were elongated in odd directions, as if gravity had tugged them while looking the other way. Others were tightly packed, clumpy and bright, as though they were trying to make up for their size with enthusiasm. The universe itself didn't help matters by expanding rapidly, stretching everything like dough. Galaxies had to contend with the fact that space was pulling them apart, even as they attempted to gather themselves together. Perhaps this is why their shapes seemed unsure of themselves. When the floor beneath you keeps stretching, it's difficult to develop a well-composed posture. The stars inside these early structures were also new at the game. Many were young, hot, and intensely bright, burning with the kind of energy one associates with someone who has just discovered coffee for the first time. They emitted fierce radiation that illuminated the surrounding gas, but also tended to push it around with reckless enthusiasm. In a sense, these stars were not the best roommates. Loud, powerful, and occasionally disruptive to the very clouds that formed them. Dust, which now plays an important role in shaping galaxies, was scarce then. Without dust to soften the glow or absorb ultraviolet misbehavior, everything appeared stark and exposed, like a room lit only by fluorescent bulbs. The early universe lacked the warm, muted hues that dust provides today. Instead, it blazed sharply, its young stars displaying a certain eagerness to be noticed. And then there were the mergers. Galaxies in the early universe collided with an enthusiasm that bordered on overcommitment. With space still compact compared to modern times, encounters were more common, and these young galaxies approached each other without the refined etiquette they would later develop. Collisions were not catastrophic in the fiery, explosive sense. They were slow, gravitational dances, but they were undeniably clumsy. Two small, awkward galaxies would drift together, gently tugging at each other until their stars mingled, creating a new object that was usually even messier than the originals. If galaxies had had the ability to apologize, the early universe might have been full of murmured, "I'm so sorry. I didn't see you there," spoken across billions of light years. Instead, gravity handled the misunderstandings, blending them together with patient indifference. What makes this youthful awkwardness so endearing is that it represents the universe before it mastered structure. Today, galaxies can be grand spirals with sweeping arms or massive ellipticals glowing smoothly like cosmic lanterns. But back then, everything was more tentative. Patterns had not yet emerged. Rules were still being discovered. The universe was improvising. James Webb's deepest images bring these ancient, untidy galaxies into view with remarkable clarity. What the telescope reveals are not polished designs, but works in progress. Distant star clusters that appear almost innocent in their disorganization. Their uneven brightness, asymmetrical forms, and compact sizes all hint at an era when cosmic architecture was still learning how to hold a blueprint. And yet, within this disarray lies a quiet beauty. The early universe's lack of structure wasn't a flaw. It was potential. Each irregular clump of stars was a seed of something grander. Every awkward merger contributed to the building of larger, more graceful galaxies. The ungainly shapes, the luminous bursts, the lopsided forms, all were steps toward the galaxies that would eventually spiral across the cosmos with smooth confidence. There is a humility in these beginnings. The universe did not spring forth in perfect form. It grew into itself gradually, stumbling through early experiments, adjusting, reshaping, learning. It behaved not like an architect working with precision tools, but like a sculptor shaping clay with unhurried, exploratory hands. And perhaps that is what makes these ancient glimpses so soothing. They remind us that complexity, order, and grace do not appear suddenly. They rise from earlier states of trial, error, and gentle imperfection. The galaxies we see today, majestic and immense, owe their existence to those small, awkward structures that once drifted through a universe still deciding what it wanted to be. In witnessing that early untidiness, we glimpse the universe at its most honest, unfinished, enthusiastic, and wonderfully unpolished. Chapter 11. Seeing the first structures take shape. There is a quiet pleasure in watching something assemble itself. Whether it's a snowflake crystallizing on a window or clouds gathering into patterns that hint at a coming rain. The early universe, too, had its moments of quiet assembly, moments when matter began to gather, not with urgency, but with the patience of something that understood it had all the time it could ever need. These beginnings were not dramatic. They unfolded slowly, like a thought that takes shape only after being allowed to drift peacefully through the mind. The James Webb Space Telescope gives us a chance to witness these early moments of cosmic craftsmanship. Not in real time, but through the traces left behind. Traces that show how the universe gently coaxed complexity out of simplicity. Looking through Webb's observations is like watching an ancient workshop where the first structures practice balancing themselves in a world still learning its own rules. What we see is emergence, not spectacle. Gas clouds begin to fold, condense, and thicken. They resemble wisps of smoke at first, delicate and formless. But as gravity gathers them in, they start to settle into shapes, vague silhouettes of what will someday become stars. Nothing in this process is abrupt. The clouds drift for ages, interacting with one another in slow, continuous motions. Their densities increase almost imperceptibly, like the dimming of twilight you don't notice until darkness has already arrived. Inside these clouds, the earliest stars prepare their entrance. They begin as subtle, warm spots, barely distinguishable from their surroundings. Slowly, they contract, heating gently, as though the universe were rubbing its hands together to coax a spark of light from the cold. When these stars finally ignite, they do so without fireworks. Their first illumination is soft and steady, more like a lantern being lit in a large room than an explosion. Around these newborn stars, material begins to swirl, dust, gas, and fragments that drift into orbits. These early disks are the ancestors of planets, though at this stage they behave more like loose gatherings, hesitant and clumpy. Webb's infrared sensitivity reveals the warmth of these structures, the faint glow of matter in the act of organizing itself into something more cohesive. Watching them is like observing clay turning slowly beneath a potter's hands, tentative at first, then increasingly confident. Galaxies form in much the same way, though on scales that would dwarf entire clusters of stars. They start as faint, elongated halos, so subtle that only an instrument like Webb can detect their presence. Over time, these halos draw in more material, forming knots and filaments. The knots brighten as stars accumulate. The filaments curve gently, as if gravity were sketching the outlines of future galaxies with a patient brush. The striking thing about this emergence is its serenity. Nothing feels rushed. Even the interactions between forming structures unfold with the grace of choreography performed in slow motion. Clouds brush past one another, exchanging material. Streams of gas meander inward, shaped by forces that tug but do not shove. There is an elegance in the way complexity grows from these interactions, not through violent disruption, but through subtle cooperation. When we observe these early formations, we are witnessing a universe that moves according to rhythms almost too slow for our minds to grasp. The pace is soothing, like the gradual opening of a flower or the slow drift of continents. Here, Webb allows us to see the intermediate steps, the ones that often go unnoticed in the grand sweep of cosmic evolution. It shows us that galaxies did not spring suddenly into being. They accumulated themselves gently, like snow building layer by layer on a quiet night. Within these forming galaxies, stars begin to cluster. The clusters are uneven and loosely arranged, but their presence marks an important shift. Light is now interacting with the universe, shaping it in subtle ways. Radiation nudges nearby gas, encouraging some regions to contract while pushing others outward. The interplay resembles a calm conversation, each side influencing the other without argument. Complexity deepens, not through dominance, but through balance. One might imagine the universe in these moments as an artist practicing the fundamentals, shading, blending, eye-sketching outlines. It wasn't yet producing masterpieces. It was learning how to handle its materials, how to coax structure from amorphous beginnings. And in this learning, there was room for experimentation. Some regions developed clusters that fizzled out. Others formed unstable patterns that attempted to persist before dissolving back into the background. The universe had the freedom to try things without consequence, knowing that even its missteps contributed to the richness of its future. Webb's contribution lies in its ability to reveal these early gestures, these formative strokes that set the stage for everything that followed. It uncovers faint traces of assembly that other observatories cannot see, not because they are hidden behind curtains, but because their warmth is too subtle for ordinary instruments to detect. Webb listens for these gentle beginnings, capturing the glow of matter that is just starting to realize it can become something greater. As we absorb these images, a calm understanding settles in. Complexity is not born fully formed. It arises slowly, from interactions that seem delicate and almost hesitant. The galaxies we marvel at today trace their origins back to these quiet processes, these understated gatherings of gas and stars. Their elegance grew from earlier softness, their grandeur from earlier fragility. Watching these first structures take shape is a reminder of the universe's deliberate patience, its willingness to let things unfold in their own time. Nothing about these early formations demands attention. They simply exist, growing gradually, allowing gravity, heat, and time to guide them without force. And in that slow emergence, we witness something profoundly reassuring. The cosmos builds itself gently, as though it understands that beauty is not the result of haste, but of persistence, subtlety, and quiet, unhurried growth. Chapter 12. What Webb Cannot See. Every great story contains pauses, moments of quiet that give shape to what comes before and after. The universe is no different. For all its luminous displays and generous offerings of starlight, it also holds pockets of darkness, regions where even a telescope as perceptive as James Webb must bow to the unknown. These absences are not failures of observation. They are part of the universe's natural rhythm, the soft rests between cosmic notes. When people imagine a powerful telescope, they often picture an instrument capable of revealing everything, as though the universe were waiting to be unmasked in its entirety. But visibility has its boundaries, shaped not by a lack of effort, but by the nature of existence itself. Webb may be exquisitely sensitive, able to catch whispers of warmth from across ancient distances, yet there remain places where light refuses to travel, or travels too faintly to be gathered. These hidden corners are reminders that some stories are written in ink too pale for reading. Some regions are concealed by immense clouds of cold dust, dust so dense that even infrared light struggles to pass through it. These cosmic veils are not malicious. They simply exist as part of the universe's ongoing experiments in structure and shadow. In these places, matter drifts quietly, shielded from view, outgathering itself into shapes that will not reveal their presence until they choose to radiate heat or light into openness. Webb can sense some of this warmth, but not all of it. There are pockets where even its careful listening cannot penetrate the thick, muffled dark. Then there are regions where light has not yet had time to arrive. The expansion of the universe stretches the earliest signals to wavelengths so long that they slip beyond Webb's ability to hear them. Beyond that lies a deeper silence still, the period before the first stars ignited, when the cosmos was filled with neutral gas that absorbed light rather than releasing it. This epoch, sometimes called the Cosmic Dark Ages, remains inaccessible not because Webb is inadequate, but because there is simply nothing there for it to detect, at least not in the language Webb understands. It is easy to imagine these unseen places as voids, but that's not quite right. They are more like pages yet to be written, or melodies waiting for their first note. The universe is full of spaces in transition, moments where structure is emerging or dissolving, where signals are preparing their long journey or fading into memory. Webb glimpses many of these transitions, but never all of them. No instrument can. Yet there is a strange comfort in this limitation. The universe does not hand us every secret at once. It leaves room for imagination, for humility, for the quiet understanding that not everything is meant to be observed. Some things grow in private. Some things end without witnesses. Some things simply exist outside our sensory reach, as though the cosmos reserves a few mysteries for itself. Even the darkness between galaxies carries a kind of texture, faint and elusive. Particles drift there cold and nearly invisible. Rare interactions send out whispers of energy too delicate to capture. Webb can peer into these stretches and sense their subtlety, but much of what happens in the deep void remains unrecorded. This is not a flaw. It is the universe speaking in a register too quiet for any instrument, a reminder that silence is as much a part of cosmic language as light. There are also forms of matter and energy that Webb will never detect, not because they hide, but because they do not interact with light at all. Dark matter, the mysterious scaffolding upon which galaxies assemble themselves, reveals its presence only through gravity. It cannot be captured in images. It leaves no glow, no warmth, no shimmering trace. Webb can observe the way galaxies bend and gather, inferring dark matter's influence, but it cannot see the substance directly. Dark matter is the universe's reserved companion, participating actively in structure while remaining completely uninterested in being photographed. Likewise, dark energy, the force that encourages the universe to expand ever faster, offers no visible signature. It is a quiet, persistent pressure, more like a mood than a force. Webb senses its effects in the way distant galaxies stretch away from each other, but the energy itself remains untouched by observation. In this sense, the universe still holds at least two of its foundational ingredients behind a curtain, as if reminding us that even the most advanced telescope must accept a bit of mystery. Webb also cannot view the present state of objects whose ancient light it receives. It observes their histories, not their current forms. What exists today in those distant regions remains hidden from us by time, not distance, a gentle truth that invites acceptance rather than frustration. The universe sends messages as it pleases, and sometimes the messages are older than we expect, arriving long after the senders have changed into something new. In contemplating these limits, an unexpected softness emerges. The universe is not withholding out of reluctance. It simply speaks in many dialects, some of which our instruments do not yet understand. Webb hears the warmth of forming stars, the stretched glow of early galaxies, the quiet shimmer of dust drifting through space. But there are deeper layers, quieter tones and fainter impressions that require future listeners, tools tuned to frequencies we have not yet learned to follow. And that is comforting. It means the universe is not a solved puzzle. It is an ongoing story with chapters still unread, footnotes still hidden, and margins where the ink has not yet dried. Webb offers us a profound glimpse, but not a final one. Its vision ends not in disappointment, but in invitation. In these unseen regions in the darkness Webb cannot penetrate, the cosmos rests. It breathes, it waits, and in that waiting, it reminds us that mystery is not a flaw in our understanding, but a natural part of the universe's patient unfolding. Chapter 13. A telescope that sees without looking back. In a universe filled with movement, stars orbiting, galaxies drifting, worlds spinning in perpetual choreography, the James Webb Space Telescope remains utterly still. It does not pursue the cosmos. It does not swivel frantically in search of the newest event or the freshest cosmic headline. It simply waits, positioned in its quiet perch far from Earth's warmth, allowing the past to arrive at its mirrors in its own time. There is a rare serenity in this approach. Most instruments designed by humans carry a sense of urgency. They measure, react, calculate, or adjust in rapid succession. Webb, however, has no interest in immediacy. It observes without the pressure of the now. Instead, it listens to whatever light happens to wander into its line of sight, understanding deeply that the universe never sends anything early and never sends anything late. Because of this, Webb does something almost philosophical. It sees without looking back. It does not compare the galaxies of yesterday with the galaxies of today. It has no concept of nostalgia, no yearning for earlier states, no impatience for what comes next. It bears witness to the past without trying to restore it or interpret it through the lens of later events. What arrives is simply accepted, like a message in a bottle washing ashore after drifting through the ocean for ages. The telescope's relationship with time is unlike ours. Humans often look backward with emotion, placing memories in context, reshaping them, assigning them new meanings as perspectives change. But Webb views the past exactly as it was, with no reinterpretation, no embellishment. A galaxy that shone brightly billions of years ago appears to Webb without commentary, without expectation. The telescope receives the light and allows it to speak for itself. This impartial witnessing carries a kind of wisdom. Webb's observations are not tangled with what the objects have become since their light departed. A galaxy seen in its youth might now be a majestic spiral or a quiet, fading smudge, or perhaps something even more complex than we can imagine. But Webb does not concern itself with these possibilities. It does not feel compelled to chase the present version of anything. It attends fully to the light that has finally completed its journey. There is something almost meditative about this acceptance. Webb practices an unwavering presence, even if what it receives is a snapshot of a time long vanished. In its stillness, it teaches us a different way of seeing, one that does not grasp at the current moment, but instead honors the stories that have taken billions of years to arrive. The telescope's role is not to alter those stories or impose interpretations upon them. It simply opens itself to the truth carried by the light, however faint or stretched or ancient that truth may be. In this sense, Webb behaves less like a camera and more like a quiet archivist, gently placing each photon into a broader narrative without forcing the narrative to conform to expectation. Perhaps the most remarkable thing about this way of seeing is that it eliminates the concept of disappointment. If the universe chooses to send a faint whisper instead of a brilliant flare, Webb does not judge the offering. If a region turns out to be quieter than anticipated, the telescope remains patient. It has no hunger for spectacle, no preference for the dramatic. Even subtle glimmers, those soft traces of warmth that took eons to traverse the dark, are received with equal attentiveness. Imagine if, instead of rushing toward the future, we simply allowed moments to come to us in their own time. That is the discipline Webb practices continuously. It does not extract meaning. It receives meaning. It does not chase the unfolding of cosmic events. It becomes the place where their long-delayed echoes finally rest. In many ways, Webb is the universe's patient listener. It sits at a vantage point where the noise of Earth cannot intrude, where its instruments remain shielded from warmth, from distraction, from urgency. And in that stable quiet, it gathers the faint signatures of things that happened long before life emerged on our planet. It honors the past not by clinging to it, but by acknowledging it with calm, unwavering focus. There is no rush in its work, no anxiety about missing the latest development. Webb's mission is built on the understanding that the universe does not unfold in rapid bursts. Instead, it reveals itself over immense intervals. Intervals so long that catching even a single photon from early cosmic history requires patience measured in billions of years. And so Webb accepts its role gracefully, with no need to hurry. It lets the past approach slowly, like a distant melody drifting through the air. When the notes arrive, they are not analyzed for their relevance to the present. They are appreciated simply because they have traveled so far and endured so long. In this gentle relationship between watcher and cosmos, there is a lesson for anyone willing to hear it. That witnessing does not always require intervention, that understanding does not demand urgency, and that sometimes the most profound insights come from allowing the world, whether near or immeasurably distant, to reveal itself in its own unhurried way. Webb's gaze is steady. Its patience is immense. It sees without seeking to change, and in that acceptance lies a quiet wisdom. The past does not need rescuing. It simply needs a place to land. Chapter 14, Human Hands, Cosmic Patience. Long before the telescope unfurled its golden mirrors in the cold of deep space, it existed only as an idea, delicate at first, almost hesitant, led like a whisper exchanged in a quiet room. To transform that whisper into a real object required decades of human hands, minds, doubts, revisions, and an occasionally heroic amount of coffee. The James Webb Space Telescope is often described as a marvel of engineering, but it is also a testament to how patient humans can be when facing a challenge too large for any individual to carry. The people behind Webb did not work with the urgency of those racing a countdown clock. Their timeline was measured in years, then decades, with entire careers folding gently around the project. Some began their work when the telescope existed only as sketches. Others joined when those sketches had become blueprints, and the blueprints had become prototypes. A few retired before Webb ever tasted starlight, trusting younger hands to carry the final weight. This relay, quiet, steady, and deeply human, is woven into the telescope's very structure. There is something touching about this long-term dedication. In a world that often moves quickly, sometimes too quickly, Webb emerged from a culture of deliberate progress. No step could be rushed. Mirrors had to be polished with the care of someone shaping a fragile antique. Instruments had to be tested with the gentleness of someone handling a newborn. Every component needed attention, not because perfection was demanded, but because the faintest flaw could echo across billions of miles of possible observation. This slow, disciplined construction created a peculiar irony. People spent decades designing a telescope whose primary task is to wait. To wait for faint warmth, for distant memories, for ancient light still wandering through space. A telescope built with extraordinary effort now spends its days in serene stillness, unbothered by the haste of the world below. If it had a personality, it might offer a polite nod to its creators and say, "Thank you for your decades of work. I shall now proceed to sit quietly for the foreseeable future." The patience required to build Webb was mirrored by the patience Webb itself needed to practice. Engineers knew the telescope would have to fold itself into a rocket like a large golden piece of origami, and then, once in space, unfold with perfect precision. There would be no gentle tap on the shoulder, no chance to nudge it back into alignment. It had to open flawlessly on the first attempt, much like a flower blooming for the first time after an impossibly long winter. During these years of preparation, our teams tested each component with near ritualistic care. They cooled pieces to deep space temperatures, not because the components enjoyed the chill, but because this was the only way to ensure the telescope would behave well once it reached its permanent home. If you listened closely during those trials, you might have imagined the instrument sighing politely, as though quietly acknowledging the dedication placed upon them. The humor in all this lies in our human tendency to overcomplicate things that aspire to be simple. Webb itself does not need to know how many meetings were held on its behalf, how many equations were scribbled, erased, corrected, or how many times someone stared at a blueprint wondering whether a particular screw should be 1 millimeter shorter. The telescope simply needed to work when it was finally asked to. Everything leading up to that moment, every late-night calculation and careful adjustment, was humanity's way of ensuring that the universe would eventually encounter a machine willing to meet it with steady calm. And so Webb became a vessel not just for cosmic light, but for human patience. Thousands of individuals contributed fragments of expertise, trust, and perseverance. Some designed instruments fine enough to detect a whisper of heat from across the universe. Others engineered the sun shield, which resembles an immense silver kite, but behaves like a guardian against warmth. Still others choreographed the deployment steps, like careful stage managers directing a performance that had to succeed on opening night, with no rehearsals permitted. In this shared effort, a gentle camaraderie formed, a recognition that creating something built for cosmic time requires a kind of long-term optimism. The project outlasted trends, political shifts, and technological fashions. People left and people joined, but the telescope remained the constant goal, like a star fixed quietly on the horizon. This persistence has a quiet grace. It reveals a human willingness to participate in something larger than the span of a single career, something whose full significance might only become clear decades after the work begins. Webb is a reminder that patience, too, is a form of vision, the ability to imagine a future far enough away that only trust can bridge the gap. Now that it floats in its distant orbit, collecting ancient warmth and quiet stories from the universe, Webb carries this legacy with it. Every image it sends back, every faint structure it reveals, contains within it the imprint of years of careful hands and thoughtful minds. The telescope does not speak, yet its silence is full of gratitude. Gratitude for the people who built it and for their willingness to believe that the universe still had more to show. And so, humanity's grand, ambitious telescope spends its days doing what it was designed to do, waiting quietly, listening patiently, and reminding us that some of the most profound achievements begin with the simple willingness to give time the freedom it needs. Chapter 15, Light Still on Its Way. Even as the James Webb Space Telescope rests in its quiet orbit, gathering faint signatures from a universe that has already lived through countless transformations, there is light still making its way toward it, light that left its sources long before Webb was imagined, long before Earth took its familiar form, long before the notion of telescopes had even found roots in human thought. This light drifts through the cosmic expanse with patient steps, unhurried and unbothered by the enormity of its journey. It travels not toward Webb specifically, of course. Photons do not choose recipients. They simply depart, carrying impressions of the places that birthed them. Some wander in directions where they will meet nothing at all. Others brush across distant stars or slip quietly past planets without being noticed. But a few, just a gentle handful, are destined, by coincidence alone, to cross paths with a gold-folded mirror waiting in a silent pocket of space. These ancient travelers are still en route, and moving steadily through regions where time stretches and matter thins. If we could follow them, we would see nothing dramatic. No flashes, no trails, no shimmering lines. They glide invisibly, like whispers released into a vast cathedral, knowing that someone might one day hear them, even if the listener is a machine that does not sleep or dream. Some of this light was born in galaxies that have since grown, merged, or mellowed into new shapes. Some originated in stars that lived brief, brilliant lives and extinguished themselves in quiet finality. There may even be photons traveling today from structures that have transformed beyond recognition, their youthful glow now relics of a version of the cosmos long gone, and yet these memories continue onward, unchanged by the events they leave behind. What is soothing about this journey is not its scale, but its indifference to timing. The universe does not schedule its messages. It does not concern itself with whether Webb is ready, whether humanity is watching, or whether anyone is awake on the small blue planet drifting far below. It simply allows its stories to drift freely, trusting that some of them will eventually arrive where they are quietly welcomed. Webb itself, patient and unflinching, waits for these messages without expectation. It does not lean forward or grow restless when nothing arrives for a moment. It holds its position with steady purpose, knowing that light does not operate on a timetable meant for observers. What will reach it, whether tomorrow or in another billion years, carried by nothing but momentum and the gentle persistence of physics. This constant flow of en route light gives the cosmos a sense of continuity. Even in the deepest moments of stillness, something is always traveling, always approaching, always preparing to reveal a faint new piece of the universe's long narrative. The story does not end. It simply stretches beyond the reach of any present observer. It is comforting to imagine that somewhere across unimaginable distances, photons are leaving their galaxies at this very moment, setting off on journeys that will last longer than civilizations, continents, and perhaps even species. Their departure is quiet, unnoticed by the galaxies themselves. Stars do not pause to wave them off. Gas clouds do not turn to watch. These photons slip away with the modesty of small messengers who understand that their task does not require attention. And some may travel so far that Webb will never meet them. Others may arrive long after the telescope has completed its service, finding instead some future instrument built by hands not yet born. The universe remains unconcerned by such distinctions. It continues to create light, release it into the dark, and let it wander freely through expanding space. In this gentle process, there is no urgency, only motion, no deadlines, only paths. The cosmos sends its messages with a calm assurance that time itself is abundant, generous, and willing to carry these signals as far as they care to go. If one imagines Webb drifting in space with no need for sleep, it becomes easy to picture the telescope as a kind of cosmic night shift guardian. Entire nights, entire lifetimes, entire epochs may pass, and still the light will continue its approach. And if humanity happens to be asleep when a particularly ancient photon arrives, there is no harm done. The photon has waited billions of years already. It will not insist on an audience the moment it appears. In this quiet, endless procession of light, the universe reveals not only its vastness, but its gentleness. It does not require us to keep pace with it. It does not hurry us or itself. It simply sends what it sends in its own rhythm. And so the telescope keeps watching. The universe keeps shining. Messages continue to cross the dark unchanged by whether anyone is ready to receive them. There is no final word to this, no concluding revelation, only light still on its way, gliding through the ancient silence, carrying stories that will reach us when they choose to, if they choose to, in the soft, unhurried manner that has always defined the cosmos. And in that unending drift of distant illumination, the universe remains exactly what it has always been, vast, patient, and profoundly content to let us listen whenever we happen to be awake.